Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and this is the podcast where we interview experts about leadership, visibility, presentation skills, and how to truly communicate with each other. Before I get into our wonderful guest today, I'd like to ask you if you are curious about how your presentation skills are doing. Are you strong? Are they helping you? You can find out by taking our free assessment at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can see where your presentation skills are strong and where perhaps a little bit of support could help you get the results you need and the recognition you deserve. And if you enjoy this, please like us on YouTube, give us a good rating on whichever podcast app you are listening. My guest today is Lesley Michaels, who is an expert on helping women create the strategic alliances that will move them forward. Lesley hosts the podcast Women We Should Know, and she features audacious and committed women from around the world who are changing the narratives in arenas from climate change to advocacy, who are breaking the glass ceiling, and industries from film to STEM to executive consultancy. Lesley's new book is On the Shoulders of Mighty Women and is due out early in 2022. She also has a TED Talk, a TEDx Talk, which will premiere early in 2022. Additionally, Lesley has spent decades devoting energy and focus to coaching and advocating for those who have unacknowledged and undervalued voices. We had a very interesting conversation about how to build a group of strategic allies, how to not be sabotaged, how not to sabotage yourself, and how to speak for your value, and as she says, to be a giraffe in a herd of zebras. I think you'll enjoy the conversation. On to the interview. Lesley Michaels, I am so happy to have you on Speakers Who Get Results. Welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I am honored that you invited me.
Well, I love the material that you talk about, and we certainly talk a lot about alliances, both of us, because it's so important, strategic alliances.
Yes.
Before we get into that, though, let me ask you about your dream interview. If you were to interview somebody who's no longer with us, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
What a great question in all of its compartments. I would interview Eleanor Roosevelt because she touched on so many areas that are dear to my heart, from social justice to gender and many things in between. I would ask her, how do you continue to move forward on the days when it's hard to get out of bed? Because these are very hard issues.
Mm-hmm.
What is your impetus?
Mm-hmm.
I might like to borrow some of that from her.
Right. Well,
and I think the people that should be listening are the ones who say, I'm just one little person.
That's wonderful. That's a great answer. I love that.
Thank you.
I'm just one little person. Why does it matter? Why do I matter?
Right.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that Eleanor Roosevelt had was she had strategic alliances. She had people who helped.
Yes.
It's one thing I think, all these people who say, oh, they're so brilliant and they've created this and they've created that. But none of them did it in a vacuum. They all had help.
Right. That's right. I have a saying that it took several decades, a number of failed businesses, untold skinned knees in order for me to become an overnight success.
Yes, right. Right, exactly. Many stubbed toes and skinned knees, and yes, foot in mouth for me many times. Whatever got me in trouble was always saying something that I thought was funny and just like some snap remark, which turned out to be not funny after all.
I'm so relieved to know I'm not the only one that does that.
Yes, yeah. Some smart, snappy remark that, wasn't as smart and snappy as I thought.
Right.
Yeah. It's when the mouth operates before the brain does. And one wishes it would be more the other way around.
Right.
Tell me, one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you is because you're saying some really marvelous things about alliances and allies, which is something that I talk about a lot. But you have some new takes and some unusual ways of approaching that. So what got you started recognizing how important strategic alliances were?
My paternal grandmother.
Okay.
She didn't want to be a farm wife and have a farm life. So at 15, she convinced the young man who'd been courting to elope. And they moved to a new state. The woman that became her best friend was the bank owner's daughter. And was my grandmother's champion and advocate. And through this alliance, my grandmother came to own her own home and her own business in her own name in the early 1940s, in spite of nationwide laws forbidding female ownership of physical assets. That was my beginning.
Wow. Yeah, it wasn't until the 1980s that women could take out a loan without having a male relative sign for them.
Right.
The late 80s. So I remember those times.
Yes.
Yeah. How did that translate then into the work you're doing now?
Well, it was kind of a funny journey, in the ironic sense of funny, not humorous, with her being such a primary influence in my life. I believed every word she said. So as early movements, the feminist movement, the civil rights movement, all these began, and I would ask her and she'd say, they're just making not a fuss about nothing. Women and any human can do anything they want. I came to understand later because I had conversations with her. I called her out on it years later. And she said, I wanted you to have faith. I knew I wasn't telling you the truth, but I wanted you to have faith. But what she did instead was instilled me with a desire to understand more. More about why she saw it one way and why the rest of the world saw it another way. And I'm at the younger end of the boomer generation. So like many hippie kids, this was a common mode of travel. And from
hitchhiking, you mean?
Yes, from hitchhiking to the East Coast during the early 70s, when the Equal Rights Amendment, the push for the Equal Rights Amendment was gaining momentum, and being in that tremendous circle of women and seeing how they were interacting and who was supporting who and who wasn't. I've always had a keen eye on who is being excluded. And then from there, I had to, build a life, make some money, that type of thing. I ended up in corporate, and I ran up the ranks of corporate oil and gas. The environment was absolutely punishing daily.
Well, being a woman in the oil and gas industry is very hard still.
It is, but it was because of women. that it was so hard for me.
Mm.
I experienced untold levels of incivility, condescension, and constant undermining. So when I left corporate, I left with a commitment that I was going to find another way. Now, it may have taken me 30 years, but that's okay. I was going to find another way to relate to women, another way to invite women to look at the world, another way to invite women to interact with each other, because this was simply, it was clear to me that this was simply never going to achieve for us what we want and what we deserve, which is equality and equity across the board for all women of all races and all cultures.
So what I'm thinking is, in which what you were saying, back in the 70s, in the women's lib movement,
Yes,
there weren't examples to follow, really, except maybe Eleanor Roosevelt. But in the 70s, it was primarily white women who were moving forward, and the women of color were excluded from, or not included, not allowed in as much. And that is something that has persisted. And we're now finally beginning to do more to lift each other up. I know you talk a lot about lifting up the others, lift someone up with you. You have a TED Talk about that.
yes,
Can you expand on that a bit more?
absolutely. I present the premise, the philosophy, and the call to action that if every one of us as women would reach back and lift just one, every one of us who is saying, but I'm just one person, if we can lift just one with us, we can achieve equity status. We are 50.52% of the population. If we will come into coherence with each other instead of competition with each other,
Mm-hmm.
then we can all move forward. And the amazing thing about that is that it's not just women who will benefit. It will be men, it will be children, it will be in our entire society.
Yes, well, the statistics do say that companies with diverse leadership and with diverse voices, especially on the board, do better. They make better profits.
Yes.
And that those studies have been around for several years, and I know they keep getting redone, that more and more, if you have diverse voices and diverse perspectives, that will help. One of the things I find about lifting one up, how can we lift somebody up who's not the obvious choice? How can we be proactive to find somebody to help other women, but looking beyond the women that, the easy ones?
Right.
How can we be proactive about it?
Well, I am very much engaged in encouraging and supporting and helping women create templates for strategic alliance groups that are diverse in industry, diverse in demographic, diverse in culture, diverse in race, because I have found firsthand when we create interaction between us across industry lines and all of the lines, just forget the lines and interact as women, that every single one who is fully engaged, there is that caveat, everyone who is fully engaged benefits.
Mm-hmm.
They begin discovering new levels of inner strength. They begin daring to do things that they have kept in their private little internal closet. They become greater cheerleaders for each other, and they become greater positive feedback partners for each other.
Do you have any stories about these strategic alliance groups? Talk to us about it. How do we find them? How do we make them? How can we do this?
The first thing I encourage women to do is not to try to do it all yourself.
Right.
Speak with 3 to 4 to 5 women who you know. Ask them, do you feel alone out there? Are there days you would give your right arm for support from someone who understands the path you have walked?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it specifically that you feel you are not receiving? And find individuals who have similar experience of non-support,
Mm-hmm.
similar experience of non-connectivity, similar experience of feeling that there is more they could do if they had someone that they could sounding board with who was not in competition with them.
Mm-hmm.
And you bring those together. And then each one of those women reach out and speak to 2 to 3. I encourage in the beginning, don't get it too large. Allow it to be smaller. We all see these Facebook groups with thousands of people, and they serve a real purpose, but they don't serve this purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it small enough where everyone in the group can know everyone in the group.
Yeah.
Keep it small enough where there is a sense of personal engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And then create a system. I have 10 systems. Here's one. Create a system where at the end of each gathering, say on Zoom once a month, everybody emails. This is the topic I nominate to discuss next time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take a consensus.
Mm-hmm.
If you have someone who sends in a request, I've been wanting to speak about this for a long time. It doesn't seem to be a topic that is nominated. You can bring that up at the next time. Is anyone interested in speaking about this? Is this a topic that you can relate to?
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, then you can bring it into the group. If it's not, then someone in the group can volunteer, whoever chooses to work one-on-one or 2 or 3 together with this one individual who's hitting this one single sticking point where they would like support. That's just a beginning of a template.
Well, one of the things I do know by training groups of female speakers, I do train various groups, is that having the group support is so important. It matters. That's something that I hear over and over again from my clients.
Yes.
Getting more women. A lot of what I do with these women is to get more women out there speaking on the world stages, because you have to ask, you have to push yourself forward. You have to, and pushing yourself forward is maybe not the way to say it, but you have to actually raise your hand and say, hello, I have something to say. Forming groups of women is great.
Yes.
How can we get men involved as allies? How can you recruit male allies? And why? Why should we?
I really don't have an answer to that question, Elizabeth, because I do not pursue recruiting male allies.
Okay.
And not because I have no use for men. I am not one of those women. The majority of my closest friends are male. But there has been the old boys club for a very long time. There has been a consistency of men grouping together, whether it be in mastermind, mentoring, what have you, in all levels of business. What women have not had to the extent that is needed is their own safe space where they can express in the way that is unique to the female emotional system and the female nervous system. And so I believe it is important to start with creating that for women. There's a book out called The Secret Handshake that refers to the way men have done business. Women have not had their own version of that. And so I present strategic alliance as an approach to creating our own version of the male's secret handshake.
Yes, and I'm going to challenge you on that, because
Sure.
Western business is built on the male system, especially if you work in a male-dominated industry. I mean, you did years in oil and gas, so that's a male-dominated industry.
Just a bit.
Just a bit. I do know, though, that there are so many men who really want to have women as allies, who want to recruit great women. They just don't know how. And women want to have male allies support them, but they don't know how to talk to men in the way that men can hear them.
Yes.
That's a huge part of my work.
Yes, it is. You have that corner of the market, Elizabeth.
Well, how do you need allies, male and female? How can we expand the circle? Maybe once we have a strong foundation with our female allies, how do we include the other 50% of the population, especially if they're the ones who are in the old boys club?
Oh gosh, pull up a ottoman. Let's just have a long chat here, because that's a big topic. I agree that possibly after women have created their own space where they feel that they are supported, that then there can be an addendum where there is an inclusion of men. I honestly, at this moment, don't know what that looks like, based on the fact that I am focused on getting that first foundation established, that foundation of strategic alliance. However, it is true that there are a growing number of men who actively support and uplift women. And at some point it would be, or in some manifestation, it would be great to include them. I have no answers to what that would look like. I have no ideas yet as to what that would look like, except for the fact that I have this friend, Elizabeth, who speaks to women about how to speak to men so that they can be heard. So maybe the two of us could come together and collaborate on some ideas around that.
I think actually maybe we want to reframe the question.
Yes.
As I'm listening to you, because what I'm hearing from you is you're talking about women building their groups, their support groups. Perhaps the strategic alliances with the men are not necessarily bringing the men into the women's groups, but how do you have an alliance with a man who works with you, who can support you, back you up, finding male and female mentors, finding male and female sponsors.
Right. Well, once we move into a place where we feel more comfortable in our skin, when we are more comfortable using our voices, it's long been said, women need to find their voice. We have voices, just need encouragement to use them. And as women experience that more and more, they are going to have an easier time speaking with men.
Mm-hmm.
B suite, C suite, it doesn't matter. And from that perspective, they will be more easily able to identify the individual males who are naturally inclined to be a supportive alliance, and those who would not be a supportive alliance, all the way to the extreme of those who would be in an adversarial position to an alliance. But it starts with being able to speak for ourselves. I'll give an example. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine a number of months ago. She is a recruiter for one of New York City's top executive recruiting firms. And she was just beside herself once again with frustration over the fact that the women she deals with, consistently present lower salary requests. And even when she shares with them that the company in question is eager to form a greater male-female balance within their executive suite, the women are still not comfortable asking for a salary that is equal to their value. Whereas the men come in and right off the bat, they are asking for the top potential salary that they would gain.
Right.
So it comes back to us being comfortable in our skin, owning our skills, owning our talents, and owning our worth within these environments.
You know, one thing I found that is really helpful with this is when I was, every time I have to raise my prices, and I was one of those who accepted lower pay for years because I wanted to be nice. But I found if I practiced by saying, I charge so much an hour, or I should be getting this amount, and breaking it down into amounts that I could say enough so that I heard it coming out of my mouth and I got used to saying these things. And even asking for twice as much. I would practice in the mirror, practice in the mirror until your stomach stops turning.
Yes.
Or tell people, yeah, so my speaking fee is X, and say it often enough. And sometimes I have had to raise my prices by $50 an hour. And I really don't charge per hour, but I can use that as a way to gauge what to gauge what I should be getting.
Right.
If I just raise it by $50 at a time and say it enough times, then I can go up the next $50. So there's a tip. And a coach told me that one, which has helped me out a lot.
Yeah, it's a great one. Another thing for women to realize, many years ago, my mentor challenged me strongly on what my mentoring and speaking prices were and what have you, and said, double them tomorrow. Are you out of your mind? Are you just trying to drive me out of business? And she said, no, I challenge you. Double them tomorrow. If in 30 days it has hurt your business, we'll look at it again, but double them tomorrow. So I had great respect and admiration for this woman. I did it. My business exploded.
Yeah.
It exploded, and it was a very real-time example to me of a long known truth in business, which is whatever you charge is what you tell people you are worth.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And that's challenging for a lot of women.
What are some of the other ways that you see women sabotage themselves, and how to fix them?
The number one way I see women sabotage themselves is with this epidemic of nice. You said you wanted to be nice. Females are taught from the time they are out of the womb to be nice.
That's correct. Yes.
The difference between a way a young girl is chastised in school for fighting and a boy is encouraged because boys will be boys, it reaches all the way back to them. And so the first thing I would tell all women I work with is we're going to eliminate nice. I truly want you, and I have systems for them to use to notice when they are thinking about being nice, when they are speaking about being nice, and replacing that with kind.
Kind
because
instead
yes,
of nice. Say that one again. I want to hear that. That sounds like a tweet we want to put in the blog here.
Yes, to replace nice with being kind. Nice is a doormat. Kind is honest.
Mm-hmm.
It is clear. It is unaggressive. But it is also unwavering.
Mm-hmm.
Being
I love
kind
that.
sometimes requires us to say to someone, it is not acceptable to speak to me in that manner.
Mm-hmm.
But nice would never give a person permission to say that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I love that, girls are trained to be careful,
Yes.
and boys are trained to pick themselves up and try again and to dare.
Yes.
And so what I love this about being kind, replace the word nice with kind, is it allows you to have your power and be feminine,
Yes.
without being, without trying to be a man, which is
Yes.
in the 80s, so many women in business had to try to do that. And I tried it a couple of times. I tried doing what I saw my male colleagues do when I was in the opera business. And I have some real disaster stories around that. It didn't work.
No.
So that's a good one. Be kind rather than nice.
Yes.
What else?
Be confident and proud to be the giraffe in a herd of zebras.
Okay.
Now, a giraffe towers over zebras.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But a giraffe is also a very gentle animal, whereas zebras are aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a wonderful analogy for the female way of doing business and the male way of doing business.
Okay.
But when you are the zebra in the field or the giraffe in the field of zebras, instead of pulling your head down and putting it in the ground like an ostrich and just trying to stay very narrow in your small lane, you're actually in observation of everything that is going on.
Yes.
And so you are positioning yourself more powerfully to understand where the holes are.
Mm-hmm.
And in business, anyone who can effectively fill the holes is essential.
Yes.
Those
Yes.
people who can fill the gaps are essential. So to be able to come out of that small lane, take off the blinders, stop sticking our heads in the sand and just trying to maintain and keep that job. Actually step out and be very clear about everything that is going on around you from an observational perspective. Once you have that, then you can start moving into conversations. Well, that was interesting. Can you tell me more about that? Don't start right out with answers. Start out with questions.
Oh, I love that. Yes. Ask questions.
Lead with questions, not with answers.
Uh-huh. Okay. And that certainly is one of the benefits. If you are a multi-focused person who notices a lot of things, you can see the traps coming where the single focused people who are only focused on that one objective may not notice the side issues that are going to affect that objective.
Yes.
Yes.
One example of a specific benefit of this is based on a study that was in Harvard Business Review. Companies that had women as team leaders that were heads of departments, not just in the small sense, but heads of department team leaders had more effective teams who were more likely to come in, bring their projects in on time and on budget.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were studying these teams psychologically, it was because the women had an inherent approach to business that expressed itself as knowing each member on the team, knowing their strengths, knowing their weaknesses, and having no hesitation in saying, Bill, we're going to switch you over here with Sally. I think you're both going to be happier.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I love that.
Yes.
The emotional
and so
intelligence.
by looking at the humanity and the natural skill and talent of people, women bring tremendous benefit. And this is where being a giraffe in a herd of zebras can come into great effect.
Okay. I love this. This is there's so much, you have so much interesting information here. If you could choose one lesson to leave us with, what would it be?
Every morning, I do this every morning. Before I get out of bed, I wake up, plop up my pillow, and I sit there, especially now while it's winter and I'm all under my toasty covers, and I give myself the daily pep talk.
Okay.
I look at least 3 things that I had zero knowledge about, zero skill for, that I dove right in and achieved success. I look at where I am right now and what's in front of me and what is making me the most nervous. Because I believe if we're not nervous, we're not playing at the top of our game.
That's right.
It's important to push ourselves. So
Yes.
where am I the most nervous? I've already reviewed my success. Now I'm looking at where I'm the most nervous. And then I sit with myself and I say, what is the one single thing I can do today to propel this forward? And I find consistently, but I'm not going to claim every day, but more days than not, I get up, take my shower, come into my office. By starting with that one thing, more days than not, I'm on a roll by the time I finish executing that one task.
I love that. Do you have alliances who keep you accountable for this sort of thing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And they are not shy. That's why I love them. That's why they are valuable to me. They are never mean, but they are not bashful.
That's wonderful.
And when we can put ourselves in a position of working with alliances that are never harmful, never intentionally harmful, but never bashful, we are putting ourselves in a powerful position.
That's a great phrase to finish on. Lesley Michaels, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on Speakers Who Get Results. And we will be posting all sorts of information about how to learn more from her in the show notes. So be sure you check those out. And for those of you who are listening, don't forget that if you're curious about how your presentation skills are doing, you can take our free assessment at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's www.speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can see where you're strong in your presentation skills and where perhaps a little bit of support could get you the results you need and the recognition you deserve. This has been Elizabeth Bachman. I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.